Some of the first stories we tell are pretty horrifying. Even look at the fairy tales we tell our children, or the cartoons we let them watch. And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell, a series where I spend way too much time thinking about what makes a story. And today's episode, why we tell horror stories. Before I go any further, all of these episodes in this series are going to contain some pretty dark and disturbing thoughts. I'm going to try to keep it relatively PG and PG-13, but I know some people have some problems with some of this subject matter. To say the least, right now I'm going to be starting off by talking about something that my 7 and 9-year-old niece and nephew watch, but at the same time, has some pretty dark things that I hope go over their head. I'm also going to be making light of some of these because that's my type of coping mechanism, joking in the face of darkness. Now, if you like this and want to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button because we're going to be going pretty deep into the horror genre. And we're going to start with everyone's favorite way to grab subscriptions, Five Nights at Freddy's. Before we get into jump scares and puppets and Chuck E. Cheese, I want to go with a quote that I first heard on Criminal Minds. Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us dragons exist, but because they tell us dragons can be beaten. It's a good quote, and I think that it sums up horror movies pretty much. However, it's far from the only one we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to just flash a whole bunch of these up here on the screen. And then I'm going to have to hit us with the same other warning that I do from time to time. So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. So what is Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF for short? It's a point-and-click horror game that was created by Scott Cawthorn, and it was originally released just through Steam. So far, there's a handful of them, and from what I understand, a third party has purchased the rights to make them for a console. Warner Brothers has licensed it for a movie, and there's already a book, Five Nights at Freddy's, The Silver Eyes. So all in all, this is one of those stories that just took off. So what is the main story, and what is the plot? Well, we're going to go over all that right now. Oh yeah, almost forgot, it's full of jump scares, because that's half of how terrifying it is. So Five Nights at Freddy's is all about Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which is basically an analogy for Chuck E. Cheese, and you're the night security guard. Now, why does a Chuck E. Cheese need a night security guard? Well, there's some convoluted story involving the fact that the animatronic seize up if you let them sit too long, so they need to walk around, so someone needs to be there to make sure that they're okay. And that's where you come in, you're playing the security guard. But I just want to pause for a second here. Has anyone ever heard that the E in Chuck E. Cheese stands for entertainment? So it's actually Charles Entertainment. Cheese is the rat's full name. Just, I don't know, I thought that was a kind of weird thing, but okay, back to Freddy. So the game is a point-and-click survival horror, and it starts with you being the security guard. But that's not really where the story starts, because the story requires a little bit of an investigation. So instead of doing this in the order you discover it, we're going to just talk about it in the order it happened. And as such, we have to go back, not to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but to its predecessor, Fredbear's Family Diner. And what happened at that family diner is something that I don't like joking about. Specifically because this story has to do with child death. There was someone, a bad guy. The internet just knows him as the Purple Man. And he started all this when he killed a child in such a way that the spirit could not go on, and it stuck around in the puppet. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. There are two types of scares in this game. There's two types of horror. The jump scare, which, yeah, I kind of just used for a ha-ha, but also just the dread, the horror of the situation, the death of this child, the death of many children as this goes on, because Purple Man didn't just stop there. Because the owner of the diner sold it and the animatronic, and that's where Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria comes from, a company that tried to reinvent it after that horror. Someone got into one of the suits, though, specifically a golden Freddy suit, and lured 5 children away from a party. Their bodies were never recovered, and some people say that their bodies were stuffed into the other animatronic. But whether their bodies were or not, that puppet took their souls and put it in there. And now we have revenge-seeking dead children inside animatronics meant to entertain other children, hunting down and killing people. If all of this sounds a little familiar, I'd say that would be because it has a little bit of Chucky mixed in with a little bit of everyone's worst nightmare of an urban horror story. And we could end it right there, but we're not going to. Because you see, Matt Pat over at Game Theory had his own thought when the first game was still out, and that about a really horrible story that happened at a real Chuck E. Cheese. And I will just link to the game theory rather than go through the whole thing again. But you don't even have to go back that far, because after these games came out, we had in Chicago a similar incident, another horrifying thing at a Chuck E. Cheese. And this is nothing to make light of. This is the true horror that is in the real world. So instead, I want you to remember that the Purple Man isn't a real person. He's someone that can be beaten. He's someone who is just a story. Just a story is something I didn't think I'd ever say on this. But I want to go back to one of my thesis statements at the beginning. Because once again, I did ask why we tell horror stories. And there's a couple reasons why we do. But one of them is the catharsis of the bad guy being beaten at the end. Of course, there's also a little bit of warning in there. But this game functions on multiple levels, and the other level that it works on is the roller coaster theory, and that's where the jump scares come in. The idea is pretty simple. The same way when you get on a roller coaster, you know you're safe, well, most of the time. You still get that adrenaline as you feel the danger. That rush of fake danger is the exact same thing we're looking for. That I know I'm going to be fine at the end. I can get on knowing I'm safe. I can get off knowing that everything's fine and going back to normal. But while in the ride, the adrenaline pumps as your fight or flight kicks in. When you play Five Nights at Freddy's, it's the same thing. Or when you go to any horror movie. You know you're safe, but for those few seconds you get that jump, that jolt. And that's the roller coaster theory. So let's talk about the month of October for a moment. Obviously everyone knows it's the month of Halloween, and all month I'm going to be running all of these horror story ideas. Specifically, why do we tell them? And the first few here, as you see, was all about Five Nights at Freddy's. But join me back here next week when we're going to talk about a different type of horror story, when we talk about cosmic horror and H.P. Lovecraft. But for now, I need you to like, subscribe, and share this video so that we can grow this community. If you want a more in-depth look at the FNAF story, leave a comment down below and subscribe, and I will consider doing a more in-depth look. And then join me back here next time as we take a walk through the heart of the stories we tell. Thanks for watching.